Hello everyone, I'm Harikrishna Pentala, and today we are going to analyze my game from European Club Cup 2014. This game was played in the last round, so therefore a very crucial round for myself as well as my team Novibor, and we were paired against a strong team SHSM from Moscow, and here I was playing white against Alexei Drev. So Alexei Drev is a very solid player, and it's really difficult to pose some problems out of the opening. And quite many players tried, but he's extremely solid in the opening phase. So I decided to play something unusual. So let's start e4, c6, and knight f3. I had a strange idea, but at that time it was pretty new. Probably nowadays it's not anything special. d5, of course. Now d3 is very I would say topical line nowadays. I could not believe when my friend Nihua showed this idea, and he played couple of games 2 years ago, and he was explaining that how it can be unpleasant for black, but I didn't really pay that much attention, and I thought, okay, he must be joking. But later on, it became quite popular, and several games. I also had some games in D3, but in 2014, of course, I did not know that. So E takes D5, C takes D5, knight D5. So I could play D4. Of course, it would be just. It could be some normal Karokan, but the point is after 95. So I just wanted to make sure that the black's bishop is on c8 and he has to play e6. And here he went for knight c6, which is of course possible, but also he can go e6 or knight f6 kind of moves here. So after knight f6, I wanted to play something like just d4. Most likely, it will transpose into the game which was played in the game. So knight to c6, d4. Still, I don't have to play bishop b5 yet. Here he played a6, but after a move like knight to e5, d takes e5, let's say e6. The problem with bishop to f5 is often met with bishop b5, bishop d7, and queen d5, losing pawn here. And even otherwise, the knight should come to c6, yeah, e6, knight e7, knight c6. This is a typical idea in the Caro-Kann defense. So here knight e5, of course, I didn't expect that Alexei will play that, to be honest. And of course, a6 is in fact a nice move. The idea is very simple now. Black is threatening to I don't, black is threatening to take on knight e5, and then d takes e5, bishop f5, e6, knight e7, knight c6 kind of a thing. I think, yeah, so I can draw the arrows. And after a6, of course, white must strike with c4 in the center. And here knight e5 is not working. I mean, it is possible to play, but d takes e5, e6, c takes d5, something like this is white can pretend to be slightly better, but maybe black is doing okay here. But e6 is also maybe here e6 can be a bit of annoying, sometimes c5 to get knight to c3, bishop to d3, and short castle kind of things. So therefore he went knight f6. I think this is quite okay here. And after knight f6, knight c3. I would have, you know, I would like to have this in the game, but the issue is e5, and black is better developed, and even after taking pawn knight d7, bishop to c5, short castle, and black is in fact better here. So I could have played bishop e2. It's slightly tricky, not committing to have knight c3. We will, of course, see in the game the difference between knight c3 and bishop e2. So bishop e2 here, knight e5, d takes e5, with the knight on c3. Of course, d4 is a threat. So here, of course, black will play e6, and now knight c6, b takes e6, and short castle. So if something like bishop e7, probably bishop f4, and try to get c5, knight c3, and just expand on b4, a4. Of course, this is, I mean, white is not going to get all these moves so easily, but these are the plans which white has in such a position. So perhaps bishop e2 is preferable here for white. However, I played knight c3, knight to e5. I think a very interesting move. I actually expected him to play something like e6, knight c6, b takes c6, and here c5 perhaps, queen c7, and bishop to d3, e5, and short castle. So some strange kind of um, I mean, these kind of positions occur in reverse positions. Okay, I don't want to go too much in depth, which openings and so on. But after e takes d4, knight a4, white is doing fine. The fact that white has knight to b6, and if white manages to capture the d4 pawn, get the bishop to f4, he's controlling the entire center here. So therefore, he correctly took knight to e5. I think this is the right way. D takes e5, d4, e takes f6, d takes e3. This is pretty much forced. Queen d8, king d8, b takes e3. Of course, after f takes e7, bishop e7, b takes e3, bishop f6, king d2, bishop e6. White is not. White doesn't have anything to play for, as rook c8, bishop c4. Yeah, just these two pawns are weak. Okay, of course, white is not worse here, but black has quite easy play. So therefore, I decided to take on c3 with the pawn. E takes f6. Of course, you do not want to play g takes f6, rook b1, rook g8, bishop e3, e5, bishop to e2, rook g2 is met with bishop f3. And we can see that the bishop on f3, e3 are nicely placed, and black will need some time to develop the pieces. Rook on a8, bishop on c8. Even though black is up a pawn, it is white who can press here. So therefore, e takes f6. I would say, being a solid player and has a fine understanding of where to place the pieces in such situations. So bishop e3. So this is I believe it is a very important move, as without bishop e3, black gets to play bishop to c5, rook e8, king e7, king f8, and bishop to d7 or bishop to d6. So In this game, I would say that this is one of the critical moves I played, and it was very important to stop black getting his bishop to c5. As bishop on c5 is hard to attack and move, and also it controls a lot of important squares. So bishop e3, and here bishop f5. So the idea of bishop f5 is to not give white chance to play rook to b1. Why? Because if white can play rook b1, then he is controlling attacking the pawn on b7, and the bishop on c8 will cannot develop so easily. So therefore bishop f5, bishop e2, king to c7, and short castle. Of course, bishop f4 does not bring anything, as just bishop d6, bishop d6, king d6. Uh, this double pawn is not really useful, and of course, black's position is preferable here. So short castle. So in such cases, it is important to have the pair of bishops, and if you exchange a bishop pair, then it is quite easy for black to keep his king, as he can place it in the square on c6 or c8, and bring his rooks to d8 and e8. So rook e8. This was quite important moment, as black is trying to get the king to c8. Perhaps he always has the control on b1, so it's not easy to attack b7 pawn, which is in fact the main idea for white here. And of course, he's also developed main idea is to get bishop to c5, which we will see in the game. And here I played rook fd1. I spent a lot of time here deciding whether to go for rook fe1 or rook fd1. Finally, I thought that giving the chance to for black to have bishop c5 isn't that easy, but in fact I should have played rook fe1. Also, another interesting move here is bishop h5 and bishop g6. Of course, you don't want to play g6 here, as after bishop f3, sometimes the pawn on f6 can be potential weakness. So bishop to g6, and now bishop f3. Of course, bishop a3 is needed, because if you play something like bishop to d6, I can play c5, and somehow it's still not white is not winning or something, but white is able to increase the pressure. So bishop to a3, sometimes to have bishop b2, bishop c3 ideas, bishop f4. Game is still on. It's quite unclear here. Perhaps king b6. Still, there is no rook b1 check. It's quite complicated here, of course. And after instead of bishop h5, I could also play rook fe1. The idea is not allowing black to have bishop to c5. Here bishop d6, c5, bishop e5, and rook ac1. And here g5 is important, not to allow f4, trapping the bishop on e5. So g5, bishop f3, bishop f4. You can ask why is this okay for black? The reason is, even though we have triple pawn here, black can play rook to e5, bring the rook to d8 or e8, and c5 pawn can fall. And more importantly, the bishop on f5 is controlling the b1 square, and it is not possible to attack the b7 pawn. So this is the reason why black's position is quite okay here. And rook fd1, actually I thought it gives me chances to be better, but in fact white is doing worse. So let's see. In the game, he played bishop to c5, bishop takes c5, rook e2, and bishop d6. What else could I do? As if black gets some time, he's gonna get rook to e8, rook to c2, perhaps rook e2, something like this is his idea. So bishop d6, king's d6. Actually, I too considered that king c6 is more or less necessary, but for computer, king c8 is very natural, and it claims huge advantage for black. Well, it is likely to end in a draw because of the different color bishop endgame, but white must be careful here not to get worse. So bishop c5, rook h8. He could, of course, repeat if he wants to, but he can play for advantage. Rook h8, h3, just creating a square for the king. Rook b2, stopping bishop to b6, c5, and a4, rook e2, a5, bishop e6, bishop b6, and rook d2. So this is computer suggestion, of course. It is very difficult to play like this. However, I do believe that king c6, which happened in the game, is quite natural move, and I think humans would play king c6 not to get bishop to b6, c5, and some kind of mating ideas here. And now bishop f4. So idea is rook d6, king c5, rook d5 check to take rook f5. And here there is a very interesting move, which is bishop e6. And the idea is pretty simple, yet it's hard to see this move, bishop e6. So he's taking control of d5 square. Of course, he is giving the chance for white to have rook ab1, but without the light square bishop of white, it is hard to attack the pawn on b7. So bishop e6, rook d6, king c5. White has to protect the pawn on c4 with rook d4. Here you can play rook b2, rook c2. Of course, somehow black's king is pretty safe here due to the fact that d5 square is well protected here. And king to however, Alexei played rook h8, king f1, bishop c2. Here he could have played anything. Of course, rook 8 e6 is quite interesting, as it stops rook d6 check. Rook d5, rook f5, g6. This is just one of the ideas of computer, of course. When I analyzed this in 2014, of course, this variation was I did not see this variation, but when I checked again, g6, and here black is doing well. This move was found in 2021. However, Alexei missed some idea which I had, and he went for bishop c2. This is a force variation. Rook d6, king c5, and rook d7. Now white is threatening to play bishop e3 check, king c4. Here he should have moved his rook from e2, perhaps to e6 or e4. However, he went king c4, bishop to e3, rook 8 e3. After this, several moves are pretty forcing. F takes e3, bishop d3, king g1, and king c3. So here again bishop f5 is the move which black should have played. Not an easy move, and in fact it's surprising that keeping the pawn on c3 is favorable for black. After bishop e4, uh, rook to c7, and king to d3, king e3, rook g2, and of course black has lots of compensation. And here uh, instead of king g1, instead of bishop f5, he played king to c3, rook b7, and this is the most critical position. I mean, of course, the first critical position was when he went for king c4, and here black is still having pretty good chances to hold his position by playing g5, a very random move, but also bishop to e4 is possible here. So the idea is rook to c1, king d2, rook b2, king c1, rook e2, and I'm not entirely sure that you would want to get such a position, but probably g5. I would say g5 is interesting. So again, bishop e4 is most likely to happen at some point. But if you get f5, bishop to e4, maybe g4, it could be nice. Here he went for rook g2. Uh, I mean, at first glance, it looks quite nice. Black is winning a pawn, and if he can only remove this a2 pawn, black is, well, at least he's out of danger. But here there is a forced winning for white. So king g2, bishop e4 check, king f2, bishop b7. Alex has spent a lot of time on several moves, starting from king c4 and afterwards bishop to e4 and so on. So he was under time pressure, and here I started to feel that I should be completely winning, and instead of just winning normally by playing rook d1, bringing the rook to d7 and just taking all the pawns. Here king c4 is met with rook g1, g6, and now rook b1, bishop e4, rook b6. So this is the point of provoking g6. So that was in my mind, but I went for the wrong mode. So now this is completely winning. I wanted to reach this position. However, after rook g1, there is one small issue, that is g6 is lost. I think the move is bishop to d5, rook g7, bishop a2, rook h7, a5, rook h8, e4, and rook a8, king b4. So this is holding for black after h4 and bishop d5. So this is a very forcing line, not easy to see when you have just a couple of seconds. And here this is not winning because, okay, a5, and black is going to have bishop e4, king b3, king b2, and probably white is going to hold somehow. But luckily he played g6, which is exactly what I wanted to get. Now rook d1, and of course now rook to d7, f7, all f7, f6, h7, all the pawns are weak right now. And after king c4, just rook d6. So if black plays f5, rook b6, bishop c8 is met with rook c6, and after bishop d5, just rook a6 or even rook a4, a5, and then rook a6 is just winning. So rook d6, a5, rook b6. Probably I could even take on f6. It really doesn't matter. So rook b6, bishop e4, rook f6, bishop d5. So we got to the position which I was aiming for. Just the move order was wrong, and in most of the games you might miss this half a point. So it is very important to keep in mind the correct move orders. So rook f4 check, king c5, just a3, not to fix the pawn on a4, which makes white's life quite difficult, as a4 pawn will fall at some point. A3, f5, rook h4. Okay, if h5, then just rook a4, king b5, rook d4, and after h4, king g3, king f4, king g5. This is just lost for black. And after bishop g8, which happened in the game, king g3. So white just needs to get the king to g5 without allowing the king to get to a pawn. So king b5, rook d4, g5, and e4. So now after f4, yeah, king c5 fails to rook to d8, and after f4, king g4, just king g5 is coming, so you cannot stop that. F takes e4, rook takes e4, h6, king g4. Already this is losing for black, as king h5, king h6 is happening. Bishop f7, rook to e7, bishop b3. Alexei kept on fighting for a couple of moves, as this is a team event, and we are fighting for silver and bronze medals in the prestigious European uh, Club Cup. So rook e5, king a4, king h5, g4, king h6, bishop d1, king g5, bishop f3. I don't know why I played king f5, but king f4 is also winning. King f5, king a3, rook a5 takes, and king f4, king d4, rook e1. So idea is to play h4, and g takes h3 is not possible, and if bishop moves from f3, white is just gonna take on g4, and this is winning because of the king which can't reach here. And here he resigned, and here there was a nice trap after king d4. If h3, just g takes h3, king f3 is not possible. So anyway, rook e1 is simple, and I won my gold medal on my board after this win, and we also won the silver medal in European Chess Club Cup. So it was a nice finish, both for myself as well as my team. And from this game, I want to tell that opening surprises are quite useful, and especially uh, in the end of the tournament, as usually players are checking all the main lines and stuff. So this is one of my favorite wins.